All right, welcome to our episode extras. I am here joined by Rachel Bonkovsky, and Rachel is the Senior Director of School Transformation at the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools, where she manages high school principals and also heads up the organization's work around college-going culture. Full transparency, Rachel and I work together at the partnership, and our offices are right next door to each other.
Woo-hoo.
So this is not the first conversation we've had, but very excited, Rachel, that you were able to join us today. I think we had a really engaging seminar discussion, and really excited we get the opportunity to kind of dive into a few more questions here.
Cool.
So
Great.
To get us going, I think, when people hear that you're a Senior Director of School Transformation at the partnership, they probably want to know, well, what does that mean?
Right.
And what is the partnership? So maybe you could tell us a little bit about kind of what's the organization, what do you do, how's that different than what the district does?
Sure. So the Partnership for Los Angeles Schools has been around now for about 10 years. And unlike, it's in this weird in-between space where it's not a district, but it's also not a charter organization. So in my mind, we're really a value add to a group of schools that are district schools. So we work with 18 schools, K through 12. And these are schools that at some point have been struggling or came into the partnership because they wanted to be part of our mission, which is to transform schools and revolutionize school systems. And we provide sort of added support to schools on top of what the district already provides. So we don't want to replace what the district is doing, but we want to enhance what the district is doing. And we do that through some key levers. And one of them is around a real focus on leadership development. So we believe really strongly, as you know, that our school leaders are a key to both changing a school, but also providing a really strong school experience for our students. So we pay a lot of attention to our work with our school leaders and our assistant principals. And we also work really closely with a group of teacher leaders at our schools. So my work is very, predominantly focused on our principals and to a lesser extent our assistant principals. But with that idea that school leadership is a key to success at schools.
Great. And just to clarify, the partnership schools are regular district schools, not charter schools.
Correct.
Yep.
Yep. So they function as regular district schools, and hopefully the way they feel about the partnership is that we provide an extra layer of resources on top of what the district is already providing.
Okay, great. So I'm really curious to tell folks a little bit more about the college-going culture work. Sure. I think, in some ways that's always been the work of schools.
Absolutely.
Or at least in recent, years and decades. But I think you've been a real driving force around the college-going culture initiatives in our high schools. Can you talk a little bit about what is that work? Why is it so important in your mind?
So just to be fair, the work is definitely emerging, I think, for us at the partnership, even though you're right, that work has been there all along. I think for me, I've been with the partnership now for about 3 years. And when I first started at our high schools, I remember walking onto the campus of one of our high schools and looking at their statistics, and they were doing well on, Smarter Balance, or at that time, sort of the transition into Smarter Balance. They had a really pretty high graduation rate. It was in the 80s. Now it's in the 90s. And I remember saying, well, what about college? And it was sort of a little bit of a blank reaction of like, we have a college counselor and we push towards college, but they weren't really thinking about it. I think about 30% of their kids at the time were going into a 4-year. And in my head, there's a huge disconnect between an 80% graduation rate and 30% of the kids going into college. And so for me, that was a little bit of like a mobilizing point for us as a network and for our high schools in particular of like, come on guys, like let's stop talking about graduation, which is maybe heretical for me to say, but like, I don't want to hear about graduation anymore when you're at, 80, 90%. I want to talk about college. I want to talk about what is out there beyond high school. And I think people, share that belief of like, we know our kids have stuff going on beyond high school, so let's help them get ready for it. Mm-hmm. So then I think for the partnership, I think the other thing that I think about was a staff meeting we had like maybe 2 years ago where we were looking at sort of early indicators of data, even in elementary school, around kind of high school success and also college success for students. And it was a little bit of a, I think, galvanizing point for us as a staff of like, we got to pay attention to early literacy in a way as a network of schools, not just at individual school sites. We need to be supporting our schools around reading, around social emotional skills to get them ready to succeed in school, but also to succeed in college. So I think we've had kind of an evolution at the partnership around let's put more of a focus and more of an emphasis on college going so that we can build the skills all the way through K through 12.
Yeah. And so you have the benefit, I think, of being able to work with multiple schools and kind of seeing different approaches to the work in different communities.
Yeah.
What are you seeing that are either established or emerging kind of things that are making the biggest difference around college going culture and outcomes for kids in our high schools?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think we have a lot of, I think one of the things that I really cherish about my work is that I work with people who have a really strong set of core beliefs about what kids can do. So I think we have a lot of educators on our campuses who really believe that our kids are going to college and are going to have great lives, and we're here to help them achieve all of that. But I also think that we work within a system that hasn't always given access to kids around everything. So one way in which I'm seeing some real change at our high schools is just around more universal access to SAT and PSAT. So in the past, it's been sign up for a Saturday, and now it's no, we're going to do this during a school day. We're basically shutting down school so our kids can take the PSAT and the SAT on campus, you know, in this environment. It's not left up to people to come on Saturdays. And so that may seem like a small thing, but it's huge because one of the data points we've looked at recently with our high schools is what's a barrier to college access? And one of the barriers is the SAT scores. So we have kids with high GPAs, lots of great extracurriculars, but they're not getting the SAT scores that would get them into a more competitive college because they're only taking it once. They don't have access to the SAT in the same way. So that's one way at the high school level that I'm seeing some really exciting change. And then our elementary schools, we have some elementary schools that have some really great established traditions around college. And we also have some elementary schools who are doing this for the first time. So one of our elementaries this fall has really taken hold of the college mantle for the first time and had some of us come in during parent-teacher conferences to talk about college with the parents and with the students, talk about our experiences, share pictures from college, show where our college was on a map. And it was fun, but it was also just an indication of that work really taking hold at the elementary school.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think as I've talked to you about this issue, I get the sense that there's a lot of your own experience and your own kind of background that drives your passion for this particular topic. So I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about your own personal experience. How does that connect to this work? Why do you think that that motivates you so much to believe this is important work to do?
Yeah. So I think probably like many people out there, my parents came from modest backgrounds. My dad was the first generation in his family to graduate from high school and certainly to go to and graduate from college. And my parents really saw college access as a way to a better life. And that there was never a question about that in our family. And so certainly I bring that set of values to this work, right? Like if I think about what I think is the means to a better life in our country, I think education is one of those ladders into a better life. So I bring that lens. I think I also bring the lens, I've been in education now for over 20 years, and I think that's a place where we still have growth, where I see us not necessarily succeeding on behalf of our kids is helping them do that thing after high school well, and so I want I want to see us do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were a principal in Boston before making the jump to the left coast. So what kinds of things, maybe in your experience as a principal and, helping high school students make that transition, what did you take from that experience that's maybe still guiding or informing your work in your current role?
Yeah, so I think a few things. When the school I was a principal at in Boston, we served predominantly sort of older students, like 16 to 22-year-olds, a lot of students who were recently coming to the country or maybe had trouble in other schools, and so they were with us. So we were in a lot of ways the last stop for students in high school. And so that idea of having a plan post-high school was even sort of more imperative for them. And we did a lot of work with our local community colleges to have a pipeline. And I think what I was most sort of struck by was just how hard that is. So many of our students were going into the community college, but still, even though they had graduated from high school, they were still taking a lot of remedial courses and were sort of stuck in that churn. And so that spoke to like how we were preparing them at the high school level to succeed at college. It spoke about just sort of the systems we have set up within community colleges that I know they're grappling with now. Like a lot of community colleges are trying to move away from those remedial courses that trap students. But I think a lot of that I definitely brought into this work of trying to help kids successfully transition past high school.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want us to get into what I think is one of the more complex and just murky, sticky parts of the kind of college for all movement. And as a principal, I remember very vividly conversations with some students and their families who said, why are you trying to get her to go to college upstate? I was a principal in New York City, in the Bronx, and they would say, Hostos Community College is right up the street. She can go to Hostos. Yeah. It's cheap. It's close. She can stay at home with her family. Why are you trying to take her away from us? And I think as an educator, we have our own experience of how transformative college can be. And there's a bit of a cultural clash in some ways, or kind of a potentially an imposition of a set of cultural values on families that that as a kind of social justice minded educator, my kind of radar is tweaked about like what are we doing here with families and what message are we sending to them about what's right and what's best and who owns the right to define what's right and what's best. So somewhere in there is a question, but I want to get your thoughts on, I struggle with this. I think college is great for kids. I also think families and students have a right to make a decision that's right for them. So how do you grapple with this, and what do you think is sort of the right way for us to proceed in this area?
Yeah, so this is hard because I think, from my own standpoint, I don't want to come in as sort of the white savior and play that whole set of stereotypes out, right? But I also deeply believe and have experienced, for me, the power of college and of a 4-year degree, right? So if I think about my own kids and what I'm going to be telling them, I'm going to be telling my kids, you're going to go to a 4-year college. And of course, when they get to be seniors and they say, Mom, I hate you, and I'm not going to a 4-year college, I'm going here instead, so be it, I will support them, right? But that's all they're going to hear from me is about a 4-year, because I have a belief system that says that that's what's going to be best. And I have a lot of data that shows that it does open a lot of doors, right? It's not just my own experience. So as a person in this education system, I think my students and our students deserve to hear what I think is best for my own kids and not something different, right? And if that ends up clashing with what they're hearing at home, then we just got to talk about it. And I have to be able to tell parents, here's what I believe and here's why. Tell me, we need to be able to have that dialogue, right? I guess the other thing is just that disconnect between what kids hear outside and what kids hear at home is going to happen over a variety of topics throughout their lives, whether it's about, sexual orientation or religion, or there's a bunch of topics that are always at a disconnect between home and outside.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with this being one of them, I guess,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So last question for you, as someone who thinks a lot about how to do better in our schools and with our students in this area, if money were no object, if instead of spending $25 billion on a border wall, we were spending $25 billion on college-going culture, what should we do with it? What would move the needle and help our schools?
So we've been thinking about this work in kind of three big categories, and I don't know if I mentioned them already, but I will again. One is having students see themselves as college going. One is having students understand the steps to getting to college, and one is academic preparation. So somehow that 25 million or billion would be blown on those three areas. I think for sure better information K-12 about sort of like going, knowing how to get to and through college, but also having college experiences during that time frame. We're also seeing a huge need for that transition between high school and college, where a lot of students get into college, but they don't go, or they end up choosing something that is less risky than maybe the college that would be the best match for them. And that to me is a big money area right there. Let's go there for a week. Let's have an orientation. Let's get you hooked up into the right support system so that you can hit the ground running in the fall. So I think I might sink my money there, but there's plenty of need K through 12 as well.
Yeah,
so
100%. There is plenty of need.
That's right.
25 billion is the tip of the iceberg.
I could spend
sure.
it. I could spend it.
Yeah, we could spend it all. All right. Well, I just want to thank again our guest today, Rachel Bonkovsky. Really appreciate your time and expertise, Rachel. And to all of our viewers, as always, you can find more information, full episodes, extras, and more at our website, which is aotashow.com. You can also check us out on Facebook. That's facebook.com/AOTA show. And don't forget to like and follow our page. Same thing on YouTube, and you can subscribe to our audio podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Stitcher. Thanks for joining us.